my Dreamcast collection. I have been collecting video games over the last 20 years, and Dreamcast was one of my favorite consoles of all time. What happened to Sega was unfortunate for all video game players all over the world. Due to poor management and Japan not listening to the American powers that be, Sega got annihilated by Sony and Nintendo as well. The Dreamcast, when it came out, was one of the most powerful systems on the planet. It dwarfed the N64 and gave Sony a run for their money, but it was short-lived because of Sony's popular PlayStation console. They had enough backing to weather the 1-2 punch from Sega, and the Sony PlayStation 2 had too much hype, and sadly Sega succumbed to their inevitable defeat. I have here over 70 games for the Sega Dreamcast, and we will look at each one of them. Some of them I played and have fond memories of, while others I just bought to complete my personal collection. So, what we will do is go through each game, and I hope you have enjoyed this video. First up, we have 102 Dalmatians. Puppies to the rescue. This game was made by Eidos Interactive. Eidos, as we all know, made the Tomb Raider series, and later, I believe, Square bought them. But this game takes place based on the movie of the same name, 102 Dalmatians. And what happened is you play as this guy in the game, or Oddball as well. You can choose between either of them. And Frankie Muniz, who voiced the dog in the movie, reprises his role here. As you see, Frankie Muniz. The best people who make Disney games for any console was Capcom back in the 16-bit era. Games like Lion King and Aladdin were some of the best ever made, as well as Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers for the 8-bit NES, and DuckTales. You cannot forget about them, about those games. So the first one is 102 Dalmatians, Puppies to the rescue. The next game on our list is Atari Anniversary Edition. With Atari Anniversary Edition is good game. You get many games, 12 of them. And I haven't played this game, but I've played plenty of Pong and Asteroids before on multiple platforms, but this one is a compilation of 12 of them. Atari. Another Disney game comes next. This one is sealed, I believe. It's Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. From Disney Interactive and Activision this time made this game. Sorry about the background noise. But this is an action platform game. It's decent at the best. It's not superb by any means. But it will kill some time, and as Toy Story 4 has already been announced, maybe pop this one in for some, some nostalgia. Yeah, some nostalgia. So, Buzz Lightyear of Star Command for the Dreamcast, as you see. Next up, Caesar's Palace 2000 Millennium Gold Edition. The largest assortment of 3D Caesar's Palace game-playing games ever by Interplay. Interplay make this console game. As you see right here is decent amount of games at your disposal, and they give you it's pretty cool. You can keep getting loans from the cashier. Imagine you are mortgaging your house in this game and you owe the casino $1 million. I don't want to do that in real life. But you can indulge in world-class gaming action in this one. So this invisible dealer, as you see, they just have the hands, but not the person. Caesar's Palace 2000. Next up is a game that is very iconic. One of the best arcade-style games to ever come out for the system. And it also has a sequel as well that was not as good, in my opinion. But this first one is a classic and is a must-have for any Dreamcast owner's library. And the game from Sega themselves, as we all know, is Crazy Taxi. The band The Offspring did the soundtrack for this one, and you may know the band from songs such as Pretty Fly for a White Guy, and bands that are like that in general, songs like that one. But this game had it all. It had arcade action, it had very fast speeds, it was very hectic at times. I mean, it's a funny game, it's enjoyable. It gets hard at some points, very hard, and this is pretty cool. You have the arcade mode that came out in arcades, the original, and then a crazy box mode. Also, Bad Religion did some songs, but Offspring is what I remember. And it's great must-have game from Sega for the Dreamcast is Crazy Taxi. You must have this game. So, next up, the sequel, as I mentioned before, Crazy Taxi 2. And in this one, you're in New York City instead of San Francisco, I believe. And it's not as good of a game. It's not terrible by any stretch. Do not misunderstand me. But it's just not as polished and as fun as the first one, in my opinion. So, not much to say about this one other than, if you can find for $15, it's definitely worth the game, but anything more than that is a bit much, in my opinion. Next up is the Ultimate Edition of Daytona USA. This is the edition that unfortunately should have come out on the Saturn at launch, and it did not. That's when you had the sequel to Daytona on the Saturn. I believe it was called the Championship Edition, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me in the comments if I got it wrong, but Daytona, this is a beautiful, beautiful rendition of the game. Obviously, with the power of the Dreamcast, it would better have been. But yeah, it's great racing fun, and you get 3 exclusive new circuits, as you see. So pick this one up if you can. It's not that bad. The price is probably $20 or less. Is worth picking up. Hasbro, of all people, they usually do game show games or board games like Monopoly or Battleship, stuff like that. But this game is by far the pretty good version from an unlikely source, if you understand me. But Daytona USA is a good must-have game for the racing genre on the system. The next game is Dead or Alive 2. Dead or Alive 2 is one of the best fighting games you could ever play for the system. It is beautiful graphically. It is unbelievable. Now, interestingly enough, I could have sworn I had Dead or Alive 2 in my collection. But for some reason, when I went to go look for it, I found that I did not have it anymore. And I don't know what happened to it, or what, if I gave it away, or what could be. But this is, obviously I inserted this into the video with editing, because you have to go alphabetical order, and this is what I found. So Dead or Alive 2 I did not have for some reason. I had it for the PlayStation, I had the hardcore edition, but I did not have it for the Dreamcast, which made no sense to me. I could have sworn I had it, but apparently not. But what a beautiful game, beautiful graphics, beautiful fighting, beautiful everything. I mean, the game is great, it's beautiful, I love it, it's one of my favorite games. One of my favorite games of all time for the Dreamcast, and one of the favorite fighting games of all time, period. Each iteration of Dead or Alive is better than the last, but this one was light years ahead of, because Dead or Alive 1, it came out for Xbox and came out for PS1, but Dead or Alive Ultimate came out for Xbox, and this is the best version. And then they made the PlayStation 2 one with the OA hardcore, but this is the best version of the game. So stay tuned for the rest of the video. But I now have it in my collection, obviously, as you see, and it's a beautiful game. We have another Disney game coming up next, and this Disney has pretty much dominated the first few games that we have gone over, but we have back-to-back actually coming right up. First up is Disney's Dinosaur from Ubisoft. As you see, 3 different publishers have, or 3 different game creators, companies have done. We have Ubisoft here, and we had Eidos, and we had Activision. But this game is not, graphically it's okay, but it's just, it's like the movie. I mean, the movie was, the movie was okay. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, it just exists in the history of Disney, and just like this game exists in the history of Disney, is not much to say about it. If you're a Disney collector like myself, you have to have it, obviously, but if you do not really care, or you want to play a game with dinosaurs that is not as graphic as Jurassic Park, maybe you pick this one up. But it. Next up, we have another Disney game, Donald the Duck Going Quackers from Ubisoft. It's 2 in a row from them. Ubisoft is this crack in the case. I'm not too happy about it, but what are you gonna do? You can't really do much. I didn't play this game, I just collected for Disney purposes. On the list of games that I still have to play and complete, this is now probably 10,000th on the list. But again, you can't really go wrong with Donald Duck and Ubisoft. So, is it one of the best games of all time? Absolutely not, but I'm pretty sure it will be halfway decent. So, now comes an old friend that we did not see on the Sega Saturn, but made a big impression on the Sega Genesis and the Sega Game Gear. And here he is, back in action. Ecco the Dolphin, Defender of the Future. Not bad for $9.99, so here IGN gave it best game of 2000, one of them. I still have not played this. I need to play and complete the games for the Genesis, even though there's really no connecting story to this game. But the way I do things is I play the ones that come before and then catch up, either whether there is a connection or not. I still do it that way, and that way I have the full Echo or experience or whatever game we may play. But yeah, Ecco the Dolphin, beautiful graphics on the game from Sega and Appaloosa Interactive with a horse. Next up, we get our first sports game of this generation for the system. It was not good by any stretch of the imagination, but they did the best they could with their first iteration, and actually it was almost the only iteration before the powerhouse that it is today, which we'll get in a moment. But ESPN NBA Tonight. Alonzo Mourning is on the cover, is on the Miami Heat, as you see. This one is crack on the case, but graphically it was very good, but gameplay-wise it was not the best. Konami put this game out. Konami had trouble on the PlayStation with their In the Zone series. It was not the best at all. But yeah, ESPN, NBA 2K, NBA Tonight. The next game from Eidos was a port of the PlayStation version, and unfortunately the controls were the same, very blocky, very sometimes unresponsive controls. But we have Fighting Force 2. This version is sealed, I believe. Maybe not. Good beat-em-up game with some action elements, almost like a Streets of Rage game for the future generation, but graphically big difference from PlayStation version, obviously because of the power of the Dreamcast at the time. This game, I do not know what it is. I got it for pretty cheap money in the Flogian or Floigan or Floigan. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's Floigan Brothers. Episode 1, unfortunately the only episode there ever was, because nobody made another one ever. So obviously not the greatest of games, but it's an action platformer, action platformer, and they tried to take advantage of the Sega's ability to get online with the Dreamcast, but alas, nobody really bought this game that much. It's a pretty good game from what I've heard. If the other game was 10,000th on my list of games to play, this is probably 10,001. So, next up, we have Gauntlet Legends, and you cannot go wrong with Gauntlet at all. Dungeon crawler of magnetic proportions, of massive proportions, I should say. But graphically, the game is better on the Dreamcast than it would be on the PlayStation, or the N64 for that matter, which it also came out for. A lot more memory for the Dreamcast version versus the PlayStation versus the N64, but this is the definitive edition, although the N64 version was not that bad at all. So, again, you can't go wrong with Gauntlet. It's one of the best games you could ever play. By far, one of the best games you could ever play. So, Gauntlet Legends is by far a very good game. Grand Theft Auto 2 made its debut on the Dreamcast, or let me rephrase, Grand Theft Auto made its debut on the Dreamcast as Grand Theft Auto 2 is the only version that came out for the system, and it's basically just a updated version of the PlayStation 1 with better graphics. That's about it. There's nothing that crazy about it at all. So, House of the Dead 2 was an arcade game that was highly addictive and highly very, very well acclaimed, critical acclaim for the arcade series. House of the Dead 2 had it all. Better game than the first one, more winding paths and crossing intersection type paths to the bosses. Speaking of bosses, much bigger ones and deadlier ones and more grotesque ones. The acting is so horrible in the game that it's hilarious for most people. I don't know if they purposely made it like that, or if the actors really were that bad, but the voice actors, obviously, but great game, one of the best in the series. House of the Dead 2. Our second casino game, this time Oil Casino. It's from Sierra. Sierra made a lot of PC games and role-playing games for the PC over the years. They also made very good sports series, front page sports, both baseball and football. I used to play them on the PC a lot, but here is basic casino game. There's nothing really to write home about this game. You're not missing out if you don't play, but I collect casino games, so this came into my collection as well. Another arcade game comes home to the Dreamcast, Hydro Thunder. This This also came to the N64 and to the PlayStation as well. Hydro Thunder, very good racing game. Arcade, Cruising USA, but on water. Pretty good game. Best to pick up. If you can find it for under $20, you pick it up because it is definitely should be in your collection. If you like the Midway racers, then if you have a Dreamcast, this is the definitive edition of the game. And then the last game in the first pack of games is a sealed game. It is Looney Tunes Space Race from Infogrames. So, basically you are Daffy Duck, I believe. I haven't played this one, but so it's a racing game, sort of like Mario Kart, but with Looney Tunes characters. So, I mean, give it a try. You know, you could find it for cheap. Give it a try. Mine, I ended up getting this. $30 was a sealed copy, so I grabbed it because, you know, I'm a collector after all, and if a game is used for $20, $22 and a brand new one is $8 or $10 more, I usually get the brand new one because it's the collector in me. If it's a big price difference, then I really make sure that the used copy is in tip-top shape. But if it's brand new, then it's not much more money, then I pick it up. That's the way I collect for my collection. So, okay, that is the first row of games. Let's go to the next one. Okay, sorry about that. So, this is the ultimate fighting game that came out in arcades, and it found a home on the Dreamcast. And Capcom was very good to Sega. Capcom, over the years, were very, very good to Sega. They ported a lot of their arcade games to both Sony and Sega, but they easily could have just done it for the Sony PlayStation. But surprisingly, the Saturn and the Dreamcast, well, not surprisingly about the Dreamcast, but surprisingly the Saturn, their ports were much better than the Sony's were. I don't know if it had to do with limited memory or what. I know the Sega Saturn had the RAM card that you put in for extra memory, but whatever it was, Sega's Saturn's arcade fighting games were 2D fighting were top-notch. But right here we have Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of Superheroes. So, I mean, what can I say? It's one of the best fighting games of all time. Easily top 20. Might even be top 10. But great fighting action. And it also came with a sequel, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I did not play the sequel. I only played the first one. I was never much of a Street Fighter fan. Mortal Kombat and Tekken and Dead or Alive and Soul Calibur, those are my 4 top fighting games. Street Fighter, I never got into that much. I played Street Fighter 2 for the Game Boy. It was my first Street Fighter game, and a lot of people will say, well, the only reason you don't like Street Fighter is because you played it on a Game Boy. Of course, you're not going to like a Street Fighter. That is ridiculous. But no, my friends had a Street Fighter for the Genesis, and we usually just played Mortal Kombat because it was light years ahead of 2 different fighting games. Street Fighter, you had to be very good. You had to know the combos and juggles and defense, and with Mortal Kombat it was more of the shock factor. What secrets could you find with Mortal Kombat? What is the backstory? It's an origin story. It's not so much the origin story of every character. So next up, we have Midway's Greatest Hits Volume 1. This is a sealed copy, brand new, never open. And as you see, these are the games. I am not really a fan of any of these, so I will probably not play this. It will be sealed for life, but as you see, if you are a fan of these Midway arcade games, then you will love what you see. So, okay. Next up is Mortal Kombat Gold. Now, Mortal Kombat Gold, for those of you who do not know, is a updated version of Mortal Kombat 4. Mortal Kombat 4 was a big disappointment. It was the first 3D Mortal Kombat game, but graphically it was awkward looking, and the characters were very dull, the new ones. It introduced a new boss, Shinnok, and a new sub-boss, for the most part, Quan Chi, as far as story goes, even though Goro came back from MK1. But it was a very, very mismatch of a game. And the Dreamcast version was a little better, but not it's not the best. It is the best version of Mortal Kombat 4, but it's just not a good game. I did not like it, and that was sadly the end of Mortal Kombat in the arcades. It did not do well. Arcades were dying out anyway, but this certainly did not help. So, with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, which is Mortal Kombat 5, that was the first direct-to home console game in the series. This was the last arcade game. Next up, we have a Miss Pac-Man Maze Madness. This game is sealed. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not sealed. Not only is it not sealed, it says pre-owned game right on the front. And the case is cracked, which I'm not happy about. I try to have my games in great condition, but this one I have to change out the case. But Miss Pac-Man is basically it's an adventure game with Miss Pac-Man, as opposed to a Pac-Man World that starred the original boy Pac-Man. This is his wife's or girlfriend's her own adventure game, just like that one. So nothing much. It came out for both PlayStation and N64 as well. Namco Museum. You have Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxian, Pole Position, and Tic Tac. Pretty easy stuff here, nothing too crazy. If you like these games, then you will definitely like this package of games. So pretty easy, nothing too fancy. Now we get into what is the best basketball series of all time. By a long shot, there's no one even close. And it all started on the Dreamcast. And we have NBA 2K. NBA 2K, as you see. NBA 2K1. And NBA 2K2. All three of these games. But this one was the first one, and one of the best basketball games, graphically, gameplay-wise. Just beautiful, beautiful graphics. The gameplay was superb. And they finally polished it off to NBA 2K2, and then when the PlayStation 2 came out, all those games were on the PlayStation, and that was, the rest is history with that one, because 2K Sports has made unbelievable games to what it is today. Back in the day, EA Sports used to be the go-to for every sports game. You had NBA Live for the basketball. You had NHL series for hockey. You still do, but it's not saying much anymore these days. Baseball was triple play, and then later MVP, and then Madden, obviously. But 2K Sports is where it's at when it comes to basketball. Then we have arcade ports of NBA Hoops, which is an NBA Jam, but upgraded with more modes, more rules, secrets, and stuff like that. So NBA Hoops is a great game, fun basketball, and then NBA Showtime on NBC. This was the original. I believe Hoops was the sequel to it, but this was graded at the NBC NBA presentation for basketball. It's great fun, and you should all pick these copy up if you want to have fun with your friends for quick moments and play sports arcade action. So this is great. Then we had one college football game, NCAA 2K2. Again, the case is cracked. I'm not too happy about it, but for $5, I will try to fix the case. Graphically great game. Beautiful graphics on this one. Superb animations and gameplay. Tetris has to make an appearance on every console there ever is, as well as keychains, as well as phone apps, but Dreamcast was no exception. You have the next Tetris Online Edition. And you get classic and advanced Tetris, and you can play on the internet. And you could, not anymore, but you could have done that, which is cool because you could see how you competed against everybody in the world. So I never got a chance to play this online. By the time this game had come out, I was more into PlayStation 2 and everything that was going on there with that system, one of the best of all time, PlayStation 2. But I would have loved to be able to play online to see what happens. Now you have Puyo Puyo Tetris for the Switch and the PS4, so we'll see what happens with that one. Now, NFL 2K made its debut on the Dreamcast. And by far, this was one of the best football games of all time, culminating with NFL 2K5, which is the game that finally gave Madden a run for its money and a big scare. But more on that in a minute. NFL 2K. NFL 2K1. NFL 2K2. On the Dreamcast, the graphics were unbelievable. It blew every competitor away. But NFL 2K5 is what got EA Sports really frightened, because Madden over the years had no competition, and even though 2K was a underdog, everybody just couldn't trust that they were going to be the best game they could be. Madden, everybody went with what they knew. They did not want to waste money and get the wrong game, so they always went with Madden. But 2K had a brilliant business plan where they released NFL 2K5 and released it for only $20 brand new, whereas Madden was $50 brand new. And the thought was, well, even if people think our game is terrible, they'll take a chance and maybe buy both, because it's only an extra $20 versus an extra $50. And it sold million copies of the game. Everybody could not believe how amazing the game was. It got into more people's homes, and everybody who bought the game, and over the years who kept telling their friends and family, this is the best football game. No one believed them, but for $20, they saw finally. So that's when EA struck a deal with the NFL and said no more third-party publisher can make a football game, only first-party and us. And so Sony was able to still make Game Day, but they gave up. There was no point because they weren't going to beat Madden, even though Madden has gone downhill for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years easily. Horrible. It's the same nonsense every year. And they have a monopoly, but there's nothing anybody can do about it because of the exclusive agreement. So, unfortunately, that's what happened. Blitz made an appearance on the Dreamcast. Great football action like NBA Jam, NFL Blitz 2000, NFL Blitz 2001. So, if you like arcade football like NBA Jam, but football version, you get Blitz. Great fun. NFL Quarterback Club 2000 from Acclaim. And then NFL Quarterback Club 2001. This is a sealed copy. Graphically, Acclaim always had beautiful looking sports games. Beautiful graphics, but the gameplay was not great. Not terrible, but not great. But with the NFL Quarterback Club series, when on an N64 and then on the Dreamcast, was like a very conservative game. Graphically it was great, but very old school in the fact that it didn't take any chances. Whereas Sega's NFL 2K Visual Concepts, they graphically made a great game, but they also upped the ante with the gameplay and took risks and made it more urban style, and they ultimately won. Acclaim could not compete, and they ended up going bankrupt anyway. But Sega's NHL 2K Visual Concepts NHL 2K started on the Dreamcast, and graphically, again, great looking games. NHL 2K2, but they could not compete with EA, and the gameplay was terrible. So next is a great fighting game that also had a sequel that was even better. And again, it's from Capcom. Capcom really did the best they could for Sega with not only great arcade ports, but also exclusive games, and this was one of them. And it's a Power Stone. Frantic 4-player fighting action where you literally, it's unbelievable. And one of the most how do I say, influential fighting games for the system and for the genre in general. It graphically was amazing, and you literally could pick anything up and throw it at your opponent, or fight, or smash them with it, or you grabbed these power stones and you became a superpower, and you had deadly moves and everything. It was frantic, and even if you were getting destroyed, if you could get that power stone, you could get back in the game and end up coming back and winning. So Power Stone, and then Power Stone 2. Again, beautiful games. Then we had a port in the Prince of Persia series before it became what it is now, which is one of the best series of all time. But after Prince of Persia, for the Nintendo, they tried making other games to no avail, but they tried their first 3D. Prince of Persia actually came out for the PC, and it was called Prince of Persia 3D, and they ported it to the Dreamcast, and it was called Arabian Nights. And the problem with this game is it was great, but the cameras were terrible. Camera angles were terrible, and you glitches, and it was buggy, but it had the right idea. It just was a buggy, glitchy game. And then Ubisoft took over, bought the rights, and made one of the best sagas of all time with the Prince of Persia series. So, another arcade fighter from Midway, Ready to Rumble Boxing. Also came out for the PlayStation and the N64, but again, the definitive graphical version was the Dreamcast, not even close. And then they came out with the sequel, Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2, with Afro Thunder on the cover, as you see, Afro Thunder. It was a goofy boxing game, but very, very good fun, very good game, great graphics. Next up, another Midway racer, San Francisco Rush 2049. It's San Francisco Rush. This was not the greatest game. They tried to cash in on what they had done before, and the game should not have been made. There was no point really to the game except just throw another one out there and pray people buy it. But you can pass on this one. This was not the greatest game really of all time. It's passable, but that's about it. Then the next game is the most unique game in a while. One of the most unique games, and it had the right idea. It could have been better than it ended up being, but it was trying to be unique. And it came with a microphone, which I have somewhere. I just don't know where it is right at this moment, but it came in a package with a microphone, and the microphone you needed. Otherwise, you could not play the game. And it was called Seaman. And Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock in Star Trek, he narrated the game. Also, he was the voice of Seaman. And basically, you basically have conversations with him, and basically it's a human face on a fish, on a sea creature, and you got to make sure that you don't kill this guy, otherwise the game is over. You have to raise the seaman creature from a baby into a situation when you can actually let him go into the wild. And I never was good at this game. I did the best I could, but I could not get far. And no matter what I did, no matter how I tried, it keeps track of real time. So even if the Dreamcast is off, when you turn it on, it knows how much time has gone by. And so if you forget to feed him, or something happened, or the tank didn't, the temperature was too low or too high, he dies. So literally, the only thing you could ever do maybe was turn it on and keep it on, so that way you know at all times what's going on. But even if you're at school, or work or whatever, you got to pray that you don't make the game, you don't kill him. But what a great game, influential game, and it tried to do something that no game had ever done before, and it did the best it could, but it wasn't the best attempt, but it did everything that it could. So I give it this is a game you must have to own just to play and experience for yourself, because if you don't play it, you're missing out on the experience. Then the last game in the second pile of games is Smash Pack Volume 1 with 12 Genesis games on the Dreamcast. As you can see, you have Sonic and Golden Axe and Shining Force. Streets of Rage 2, they put the best Streets of Rage on here, which I was happy about. Columns was a Tetris-like game. Virtua Cop 2 was a Saturn game that they put on. But the rest of these are, and Sega Swirl was a downloadable game for the Dreamcast. So it was an internet browser. The game was on the browser, so they threw that on here. But Vector Man was a Genesis game, and Phantasy Star was a Genesis game, and Altered Beast was a Genesis game. I don't know what Wrestle War is. I've never heard of that one, but this is not bad for $25. And $25, it was worth every penny. So. Okay, in the last pile, how can you forget about Shenmue? Everybody is waiting for the third game to come out, and the crowd went nuts when at E3 a few years ago, Yu Suzuki came on stage and announced with Sony's partnership that he was bringing Shenmue 3 to the PS4, and I had already pre-ordered. It cost me $700, but I pre-ordered the game with all the goodies and one of the tiered levels, and it's one of the most... I can't wait for this game to come out, because after the first Shenmue game, Shenmue 2, came in Japan. It came for the Dreamcast, but it came in America on the Xbox, and there's the only way you could play Shenmue 2, and they could not. Sega was not doing well, obviously, at that time, and they did not have enough money or did not want to spend the money to make a third game, because even though the game is critically acclaimed and it has a cult following and it has fans all over the world, it did not sell well here in the US, and I don't think it sold well in Japan either. But the fact is, everybody can't wait. The story was never finished, and you don't know what's gonna happen. If Ryu is gonna get Landy or not, is he gonna avenge his father's death, and what ended up happening with all of that? But this game was in. This is a must-have. You must get. If you own a Dreamcast, you have to play this. And even if you don't own a Dreamcast and you don't want to spend a ton of money on games, just buy a Dreamcast for this one game. Or if you have a PS4, get ready, because the Shenmue 1 and 2 are coming out to HD. They're redoing the game in HD, and they're taking both games and putting them on one disc. I'm going to get that when that comes out anyway. But I'm telling you, guys, this is one of the best games of all time. Top 10 easily, in my opinion. You literally could do anything in this game. You could follow people from work. You could stalk them. You could follow them like a real person walking around doing whatever. You could play arcade games in an arcade. You could go and eat food. You could ride a car, a bicycle, whatever the case may be, you could do in this game. It was great. So, Shenmue. This is one of the best Sonic games of all time. And unfortunately, it was one of the last best Sonic games of all time until the recently released Sonic Mania. But Sonic Adventure was another influential game in the Dreamcast's existence, and brought 3D platforming and RPG elements to an all new level when this came out. Great game. Awesome game, Sonic Adventure. Now, they also had Sonic Adventure 2, which was not as good. Unfortunately, it was not as good. It tried to get too cute. Graphically, it was unbelievable. But the game itself, which is really all about it, you could have the best graphics in the world, but if the game is trash, then no one cares. You could have something that looks jaw-dropping, but if the game sucks, no one cares. The whole point is playing the game. If it wasn't, you just look at the screensaver all day, and that would be it. But Sonic Adventure 2, great series, but unfortunately not as good as the first. And then this was the limited edition, one of the rarest games on the Dreamcast ever. Very limited, not for resale. I think this was a rental copy, I'm not exactly sure, but I have the game. It's complete, obviously. They sent me back a pretty penny. The limited edition version. Then we had some party game, Sonic Shuffle. Tried to compete with Mario Party on the N64 at the time, and unfortunately it was not. It's like buying food at the grocery store and then getting the store brand version. It does the job, but it's not the same. And this unfortunately was like this with Mario Party when it's competing against it. Soul Calibur, the sequel to Soul Blade in the arcade. But Soul Calibur came out for the Dreamcast, and oh my god, the graphics when this came out, people could not stop talking. One of the most fluid fighting games of all time that I've ever played. Tekken 3, in my opinion, was the best until this came out. Soul Calibur, I can't wait for Soul Calibur 6. It's coming out later this year, and I can't wait for that one. But Soul Calibur, this is where it all started. After Soul Blade or Soul Edge or whatever it's called, this is the sequel. And to this day, in my opinion, the best one. Then South Park had some games, and it's very, very popular in the early 2000s, and Chef's Love Shack was a quiz game, which was pretty funny. Then you had South Park Rally, which was a racing game like Mario Kart, which was not good at all. Gameplay was not good. Acclaim again. Spider-Man. Spider-Man for the Dreamcast was a port of the PlayStation version, and as you can see, graphically it's the best of the bunch, but made by Activision, who does these types of games. I believe they also did the X-Men games for the PlayStation 2 and PlayStations as well. They got the superhero contract, as it were, but decent game, nothing too special. I'm excited for the Spider-Man game for the PS4. It's coming out very soon. I cannot wait. They showed it at E3 again this year, and yeah, it's a good game. Next up is Sports Jam. 12 sports games in one. This is a mini game, basically. A bunch of them from H-Tech. They make very cheap games. This one I never played for the Dreamcast, because by the time this came out I was way over and playing PlayStation 2, but it's basically 12 mini games is what it is. I don't know how good it is. Maybe someone can tell me in the comment section below if this is a game that you like. But Sports Jam for the Dreamcast. And then we have some Star Wars games. Demolition. I believe this is like a Twisted Metal type of game, or Vigilante 8 basically. Twisted Metal. You have Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. They ported over from the N64 into the Dreamcast. The graphics are much better on the Dreamcast, obviously, but this is a great game when it came out for the system. And then Jedi Power Battles, fighting game, which is a pretty cool game. Decent. Also came out for the PlayStation, I believe. So you have Jedi Power Battles and the other Star Wars games as well. Street Fighter Alpha 3 port of the arcade smash hit. Game Fan said it was better than arcade perfect. But again, not that huge Street Fighter fan, but I collect everything Street Fighter because I have a system that I will go over maybe in another video about what I collect and why the reasons I collect what I do. But great game, Street Fighter Alpha 3. Everybody loves it. I cannot comment that much. Then you have Street Fighter Third Strike. And then you have Street Fighter Double Impact as well. Another Disney game, this time from Activision, Toy Story 2. Different game than Buzz Lightyear. Space Command, this is Buzz Lightyear to the rescue. And this is a game where you play as Buzz and you have to... Basically, it's an action platformer with 3D elements. It's a very mundane, boring game, but very easy game also, so there's that. Now, these I have two copies. One is not in protective covers, which I don't know why I don't have it in a protective cover. I should, but I also have a sealed copy of The Typing of the Dead. So, basically, House of the Dead game, but you use the keyboard for the Dreamcast. And I always wanted to play this. I still have not played it. And I literally bought this 10 years ago, and I still haven't played it. I haven't had time, but this is up there. This is top 25 games that I still have to play in my collection. Because I'm a very good typist, I was able to beat my high school teacher in typing, and she let me give an A in the class and did not come back. So it was like a free period for me in high school every day, which was great. But I'd love to see if I can beat the game just with the keyboard and not the light gun. So I have a sealed copy in protective case, but I should have had these in a protective case as well. The Typing of the Dead. So I keep one to play and one sealed, obviously. Next up, I have Virtua Fighter 3TB. Virtua Fighter is another game that I forgot to mention. Is top 5 fighting games that I play, which would be Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Virtua Fighter, Dead or Alive, and Soul Calibur. I love Virtua Fighter. I love Jeffrey from Virtua Fighter. He has a goofy winning that me and my friends would always laugh about. He would say he would raise his arms in a pose like he's a bodybuilder and would say, "I win, I win." And we all thought it was hilarious. We walked down the street and imitate him, but this game, how can I say, this game is one of the best games, not this particular one, but Virtua Fighter series in general. I love it. Favorite character has got to be Cage. I remember seeing Cage in the arcades, and he would do this move. I still cannot make the move where he whirls up in the air, he jumps up in the air, and he disappears, and then he does a somersault, and the guy goes on the ground. I mean, he's like a tornado coming down, so Virtua Fighter. Then we have Virtua Tennis, just like the arcade Smash. I love this game. I'm not a huge tennis fan, but I remember working at a movie theater, and they had the arcade version of this, and I would always play it every night when waiting for the movies to get out, so I could close and go home. But I would maybe win the first or second match, and I would always lose in the third one or the fourth one. I could not beat the game in the arcade. But I grabbed this because I would love to be able to play and see if I can beat it in the Dreamcast version. I would love to. It was a great game. I had so much fun playing it. Virtua Tennis. Virtua Tennis. Next is another Disney from Eidos, Walt Disney World, the Magical Racing Tour. And this game is like a Mario Kart again type of game. Graphically, it's beautiful, but it's not the greatest game. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's average. You know, it gets the job done. If you just want a quick kart racing game with Disney characters, it's pretty fun. But that's about it. So. Now, next is baseball game, Sega's 2K baseball series, and unfortunately these games were not good. The graphically were great, but the gameplay, which is what we all care about, these games were terrible. World Series Baseball 2K1 with Pedro Martinez on the Red Sox, a huge fan of the Red Sox, and Pedro Martinez World Series 2K2. Unfortunately, and I don't understand why these games make you do this, but for some reason you could not field. You could not control the fielder. It made no sense. You literally pitched and hit and the computer controlled the fielding. I don't know why they did that, but it made no sense to me. So we have those two games, World Series, and then we have WWF Attitude, a port of the PlayStation and N64 came to the Dreamcast with better graphics. But that's really it. Great game though. Great game. It had a career mode, which everybody loved. And this was, in my opinion, when wrestling was the most fun. When you had Triple H and Mankind and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker and Kane and all these people. You had D-Generation X, all these wrestlers. This was the high point of wrestling, and when those people, it was never the same. I would say the mid-90s, so like 95 to maybe 2002. That was when wrestling was the best. WWF Royal Rumble, a sequel to the Attitude Game, but this was a Dreamcast exclusive. It did not come out for any other system other than Dreamcast. And unfortunately, THQ, they made great wrestling games, but this one was not good, and this one was pretty bad. It graphically was not good. It was very blocky. It was very awkward. It just was not a good game. And then lastly, this is sealed. This is the web browser 2.0 with SegaNet and include the Sega Swirl game that we saw earlier. But sealed copy, obviously, it's not on anymore. But I have to, as a collector, collect everything. So, well, not everything, but everything that matters to me. But yeah, those are the games that I have in my Sega Dreamcast collection. Over 70, as you see. I appreciate anybody who liked the video. Please tell me what I can improve on, and maybe I do more videos for you, like unboxing or collection. I have many systems. I have original Nintendo, Super Nintendo. I have Nintendo Game Boy. I have Game Boy Color. I have Game Boy Advance. I have Nintendo DS. I have Nintendo 3DS. I have Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Wii, Nintendo Wii U. I have Nintendo 64. I have Sega Master System, Sega Genesis, Sega Dreamcast, as you saw, Sega Saturn, Sega CD, Nintendo GameCube, Sony PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4, PSP and PS Vita. I have 3DO, I have Atari Jaguar, I have Atari Lynx, I have, what else? Game Gear, Sega Nomad. I have all these systems, all these games. I have Virtual Boy. So I have plenty of systems to show games and different books and different magazines of video game related content. So please tell me what you like to see, and I will be sure to do the best I can to do it. I appreciate everybody who watched the video, and stay tuned for more content on the channel, but I figured this would be a good start for me to show you what I have in my collection. So thank you again, and